already
Jamie
preloaded.
can't get a word in edgewise.
But I love the fact that you've both actually put some rational thought in this, whereas I think for a lot of us, we'd have just clicked the button, scrolled down as far as we can be asked scrolling down, and then just clicked the nearest number to where the mouse was. There wouldn't have been any, forethought in time to get up, time to have breakfast, grab the phone, see whether the podcast is downloaded yet. Just before leaving the house, it was on Wi-Fi, not on cell.
I think you're giving us credit.
It's too much.
Bear in mind, Jamie, that I had the concept and then I took a year before I approached either of the other two people about potentially actually doing this.
I think we went from a WhatsApp message to a second WhatsApp message to a test podcast in about 3 days, Andy.
It's not like that, yeah. But in terms of scheduling, the Waffle audio goes out when it's done.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so random sometimes. It depends on whether the tech is playing or whether something has happened, whether I need to do stuff. All sorts of
based on
things.
the Fools with Tools scheduling, isn't it?
Well, kind of. I mean, it does go out in kind of roughly a regular interval.
Well...
it's literally. I mean, if I had any sense, I'd say it should go out on Tuesday, and I would schedule it to go out Tuesday at 6 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning or whatever, so that it's ready for people to download for their Tuesday kind of commute.
If consistency was important to you, yeah.
Yeah, but I just know it's just like,
or if both of our listeners would always listen on the Tuesday.
Yeah. I get up, I deal with all the morning stuff, and at some point during dealing with the morning stuff, I turn the computer on, download the stuff. Now with obviously the after show, I have to slice the audio recording into two and send them out separately, so it just adds a little bit of extra work. And then once I've got that separated, so normally something goes wrong. Yes, it was like a couple of weeks ago. It was like everything was. I say several weeks ago. It's like none of the recordings would save. None of the. I'd split it and I couldn't save anything.
Ooh.
It took like 2 hours to work out that actually my hard drive was full.
Oh.
It wasn't totally full, but apparently there was more space needed by Premiere Pro, which is what I use for my editing, than I thought would be needed for a show. So yeah, the show's about, because I do it in the video, so it's normally a couple to 4 gig, and I'm sure I had 6 or 7 gigabytes of space left on my hard drive.
It needs to write
files.
It and then to
So that took a bit of sort of googling and panicking to kind of find out what's happening. It was like, right, no, if I just move a couple hundred gigabytes of stuff to storage drive, then it'll work fine, and it did. But obviously that delayed.
I start to get antsy when I've got less than a couple of hundred gig free anyway.
Given the amount of space that you have.
I think I've got about 20 terabytes free at the minute.
Can I tell you something that will give you anxiety?
Oh, no.
I was helping a friend out with a computer, and they had 560 megabytes of free space on a 250 gig hard drive. I was like, no, both of these things are wrong. You need extra hard drive, bigger hard drive, and fucking clean up your computer every once in a while.
That's the thing. I mean, like my shifting across to stuff now, I've got the ridiculous server. It's all on 10 gig Ethernet and stuff as well. So it just stuff just saves and it's done. Don't have to think about it. But then I'm starting to look at like the drive space. I'm over 50% used now and things like that. I'm thinking, the fact that it is like 14 terabytes free on that particular server, it's no way near being full. I've kind of condensed servers into it. It still makes me twitch a little bit when I think it's like it's over 50%.
You've got 14 free. You've got just over half used. That's a lot of
Yeah, I mean the server's got 8 bays. There's 3 14 terabyte bays and 3 14 terabyte drives and 3 4 terabytes at the other end.
That's a lot.
Can I just
Yeah.
ask, is there already a T-shirt available with the logo for Defrag just sat on it for everyone? Because I would imagine that would fly off the shelves to a generation and group of nerdy people, because that there is just like the friend
But
of
the thing is, it's
certain
like,
people from the late 90s, early 2000s, isn't it?
and it's not even applicable anymore. No one bothers
No,
defragging.
no, I know
at
it's
all.
not applicable anymore, but you know, just even from your reaction then, you know as well as I do, if someone printed a T-shirt with no context on it, but just the logo of Defrag
Just the
on it,
Windows 98 defrag.
yeah, that T-shirt would
Or the
would
command
sell
prompt.
so well. Yeah.
C://
Remind me,
Defrag
why is defrag not a thing anymore? Is it because everybody's using SSDs, or because Windows
pretty
does it
much.
automatically?
It's a little from column A, a little from column B.
All right.
The reason why we used to use defrag all the time was because
Is it not the middle
when
little?
you the hard drives kind of split into chunks, and when you add and then delete files, the files are kind of written in chunks. When you delete them, you might stick a bigger file in, so that gets split up. That was all defrag was doing.
It gets scattered all around the plate.
Putting the numbers back in order, which you don't really need to do on an SSD because it's quicker response time. So there's no
and
real
you have
need
wear and
to
tear
do
on the
rewrites.
read-write on it as well.
Yeah, so adding read-write operations to an SSD is not really useful when it doesn't actually give you any speed benefit. Whereas on a super slow spinning platter, it would be useful to actually have them all in order.
Right. Makes sense.
Just to
Makes
nerd
sense.
out.
Yeah. Thank you.
As has confirmed that there is already that T-shirt available for purchase.
Is that on
Link in the
setting
show
up
notes?
shop?
No,
shop?
it's on Redbubble.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Yeah, never mind.
Is that Red's equivalent of like OnlyFans?
Well,
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure. It's the bubble bit that's scaring me. Maybe it's like Red's ASMR channel.
I would think his thing would be only red, but
It's just like a 10-hour looped video of just Red with a boba tea.
I was picturing him blowing into a straw.
Like with a milkshake or something as it's bubbling up.
these French
Oh.
people.
Yeah, or Tim running around on a beach chasing after the bubble thing from The Prisoner.
Like 3 of our listeners are going to get that reference.
Yeah. I
Either
know.
way, he's not a number, he's a free man.
A Frenchman, did you say? Yeah.
Was it? So you've just reminded me of, I think, was the film called Fortress? It was one of those like futuristic prison films back in
Christopher
the
Lambert.
late 70s, early 80s, but it had
80s.
Christopher Lambert as the main actor in it.
Yeah.
And they had a thing where like all of the prisoners got knocked unconscious, and then they had like a beacon inserted inside them, like deep inside their stomach or something like that. And so the beacon was activated for certain zones. So if they tried to walk out of a certain zone, it would basically, like, first time offense, it would shock them so that they would just drop to the floor unconscious.
I think it was a collar.
No,
It
it
might
wasn't
be
a
a collar.
collar. It was literally it was a solid mass inside. And the only reason I remember this is because one of the inmates ends up dying. Like, he gets shot by some futuristic weapon, which of course makes him like explode. And Christopher Lambert's character is nearby, that he sees like this metal like ball type thing, and he like picks it up, and they work out that it will magnetize against the other one, and they use it to like feed the other one back through all of it up and out, so he can then like run away. I'm pretty sure
Like
it was
Total
called
Recall
like
style
Fortress.
of getting.
Yeah. It was same sort of era.
That sounds unpleasant.
Yeah, but that, you
I
know,
think
that
it
was
was
one of
earlier
the-
than Total Recall.
No, it was that was one of the many movies I ended up watching when I worked at Blockbuster, and it was like, right, I get 10 free rentals a week. I am maximizing this on top of my wages. You watch a lot of trash.
Do
during
we
that
need to
period of
explain
time.
what Blockbuster is for Raz?
Hey, fuck off.
Blockbuster was a shop that provided Brothers Make with their new Loops spectacle sunglasses really handily, with all of the Blu-ray cases and everything else.
It's like Netflix in a shop.
Well,
It's really weird. Why would you go to a physical location
postal discs?
stream a video?
Yeah.
It was 92. 1992.
Yeah, that's
Fortress
ages.
was. Wow.
I mean, that's an entire Erasmus ago, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty exactly.
Yeah.
We're starting to measure things in Rasmus now.
Oh, that's not going to end well for anyone.
We've given up with the imperial metric debate. It's now just in Rasmus or Rasmi. How many Rasmi is that from?
I mean,
This is where Multi will be missing out on this chat because he will have calculated that out now already. And
Done
I
a
need
bit of
to say, though,
spreadsheet, conversion chart.
yeah,
the only thing you can't measure in units of me is food.
I mean, it's
sounds
it's
like a challenge.
you know the way like the scale for Fahrenheit and Celsius is actually different, so that it doesn't kind of
Yeah, one is logarithmic and the other one is sensible.
Yeah, well, what I mean is it's not 1-to-1 as they move, whereas
Yeah.
Kelvin and Celsius is it's just an offset.
Mm.
So is the food measurement by Rasmus the same as the truckload? Same quantities that match.
Not sure. We'll have to figure this out. Market
I was going to say
research, science.
it would have to be based on body weight before and after meal, wouldn't it? Like, what is the weight of an empty Rasmus, and what is the weight of a full Rasmus, which is a never achieved thing. So there's a scale there already, isn't there? You've got your 0 to like infinity point. This
At
is
zero
really
point,
good
we
whiskey,
just
by
turn
the
into
way. It's making me
singularity.
sound sensible.
You're already relying on kilos and pounds if you're.
Yeah.
My favorite proper physics measurement unit. This is an actual official unit.
There's a few good
It's
ones.
the beard second.
What?
It's I can't remember the value it represents. It's the beard second. Somebody worked out the average distance grown by a beard, the length of a beard hair grown in 1 second.
Oh, so it's not. It's one single hair. It's not the full
So-
beard.
Well, you say it's
the
an
length
Same
of
average.
the
same
It's
difference for
average.
you, Raz.
It
Same
doesn't
difference for
matter.
you, Raz.
It's taking an average of how far a beard will grow in 1 second.
It's like arc minutes
Arc-
and then beard
yeah.
seconds.
Yeah, it's crazily small. Yeah, it's absolutely crazily small. It's
That's like measuring an animal by hands. Like how many
Yeah.
hands
Yeah.
is a deer?
Yeah.
Random.
Like in the chat where John says, suddenly this is relevant to me.
Random thought. Didn't they use the side of a barn in some way to measure the likelihood of a nuclear collision in a particle
That was to
accelerator?
measure how accurate people were at shooting.
Oh, okay. In Texas, I guess.
Oh,
there is one. I can't remember exactly what it is now, but yes, there is.
Yeah, I seem to recall something along the lines of they just started to make up a number just to have some correlation of saying like in the beginning they was making like fairly easy particles or new elements, and the likelihood of them colliding and creating the new one was so high that it was like shooting at the broadside of a barn. But then they realized that well, this new one, mathematically speaking, this is twice as difficult, so it's half a barn in of succeeding. And then they went down the scale, and I think we're at like something stupid low. So yeah.
Yes, it's the probability. It's to indicate the probability of a reaction between nuclear particles and atomic nuclei or other nuclear particles. A barn is the cross-sectional area. One barn is 10 to the minus 28 meters squared.
Is
Because
this,
basically it's physical
this a
cross-sectional area.
European- Is this a European, English, or American barn? Because I have a feeling they're slightly different sizes.
And
Is
it's
it red? Does it say tobacco on the side of it?
Does Roadrunner occasionally go past it?
Mm.
Meep meep.
The beard second, while we're on the kind of back on that, the beard second is 100 angstroms or 10 nanometers. Although
Okay.
Google Calculator apparently uses 5 nanometers.
I used to love doing that with Google Calculator. Is calculated because it would let you do conversions to all sorts of stuff, including light years. So if someone ever asked for a distance, you just hand them the distance back in light years instead of anything sensible.
Didn't
I think beard seconds is going to be the new one.
Didn't Vsauce recently release a drinking bottle that contained a light year of water? If you
Yes.
line up all of the water molecules end by end,
And
it turns out that it's just about a liter.
All of the stuff. Yeah.
Which is super silly. It's like, it's a light year of water in this, and it's like, that looks like a normal water bottle. Yes, it's just about a liter. It's liter and 40 mil or something.
I was going to say it's like a few over, isn't it? Surely, if they just measure the water molecules at a different, sort of pressure, that might just eke it down to the 1 liter.
I'm gonna start selling my pottery like that.
Yeah.
This is a half a liter, aka half a light year of volume. Enjoy.
But both of those measurements are going to completely confuse your audience, though.
Oh, true. Yeah. How many cups is it? How many ounces?
But in terms of dimension, you could use the idea that light will travel approximately 1 foot in a nanosecond. So you could use the idea instead of a light year. You could say, "Oh, but this pot is half a
Nanosecond foot.
half a nanosecond foot." Yeah,
It's 40 beers worth. 40 beards worth.
Yeah, see, I was going to say when the next time someone says to me, "So how long did it take you to make this?" It was about 100,000 beard seconds.
Oh, there you go.
yeah, but that's a measure of length. That's the problem.
Now you're mixing parsec and light years again.
Well, yeah, now we're getting into that. Yeah.
That's because I'm just trying to maintain part of the conversation when I have very minimal knowledge of anything
Yes.
to do with
So
physics.
now we need
The barn is red.
T-shirt. We need a T-shirt that has
You need
Kessel
a
Run
t-shirt
physics
that has got
with
the-
all the
yeah,
wrong measurements.
Well, or we just need to change the conversation.
Yes.
We could
Kessel
change
Run.
the conversation.
Speaking of,
There we do an introduction. We did an introduction last week.
Just speaking
why
of
is a
weird
snort called a
measurements,
snort?
Yeah. Yeah, second week in a row, we have a group of people in.
And whose
Look,
fault
good
is that?
Not mine. I
Mine,
will claim it.
probably. 'Cause
not mine.
I guess
isn't
it's Dan.
Isn't it also second week in the row that you've had a group of people in that you can have conversations about things to do with selling what you make?
Yeah,
Whoa! Hang on a minute. This is
Yeah.
getting far too sensible and organised.
it's getting like a theme. Yeah.
Well, that
Oh,
was
sorry.
maybe a
Dan's one of those organized people. He has to have a plan.
Really not.
He's our leader. Take me to your leader. Dan,
I
Leader
still
of
haven't
what?
done
Leader
my
of what, Heidi?
book
What's he the leader of?
year.
setting up shop.
Well,
I'm so glad you didn't say the pack.
The leader of the pack.
There we go.
Yeah,
Are you
Dan's
happy
been
now, Dan?
having
You
a
got
hard
your
time.
musical number.
Dan's been having a hard time today because we keep saying things that like bring music to his ears, and not in the sense of like he likes what we're saying, but he keeps thinking of songs that are related to a phrase that we might say. And
I can already hear all of the insults that Steve's going to throw at us.
yeah, that's okay.
Nobody listens
That's
to him
right.
anyway.
He was given first dibs at having us on his podcast, and we've been on. This is the second one we've been on before he's agreed a date.
I mean, in fairness, you kind of had an inside track in getting into the other podcast.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's like 2/3 of people
But
that
Jamie,
didn't.
Jamie, let me
wanna talk
repeat.
to us.
Let me repeat. I gave them first choice. Just saying. But in all fairness to the Fools with Tools guys, it's more about the fact that all three of them are exceptionally busy and trying to get any consistency just for themselves, and then
Stop
as
being
well as
nice.
the three of us,
Stop being nice.
you know.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's still part of the Fools with Tools podcasting universe, so we're allowed to
Yeah.
sling shit at them. It's all their fault.
We're all cousins.
Hang on, is we-
No
did we
one's
just
allowed
go
to
full
snap their
Alabama?
fingers.
yeah.
It's been a long day, guys. You'll have to bear with us.
been a very hot day here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long
John,
week today.
for some reason, is requesting setting up Shop the Musical, and I'm just going to say no. Unless I can have the dance number and not
I was
sing,
just
of
going to
course.
say you'd be the full-on dance number. What are you talking about, Raz? You're always wanting to bin off recording the podcast because you've got to go to dance lessons. Something about there being girls there or something. I don't know. It's just
Yes.
no
Do I
commitment.
need a better excuse?
No.
Yes.
I'll listen to Heidi on this one. Sorry, Dan.
Yeah, you always should.
That's generally a sensible answer, I think, is to listen to Heidi instead of Dan.
Absolutely.
Typically.
So setting up shop with a PE.
What's that all about then?
Yeah.
Because it's English, damn it, and I can do what the hell I like.
That was actually like a pretty interesting conversation that we had when we were talking about naming.
Mm-hmm.
I think we went through a whole list of, looking up what's available, what's been taken. We're 3 different makers in 3 different countries and 3 different continents. How do we bring it all, like, some kind of semblance back together or pay homage to that? And I think when we were thinking of the logo and we were thinking about the name, it just was like, okay, well, can we use a Norwegian word? No, because Dan and I both fail at any kind of umlauts or random S's and things. So we chose an old-timey spelling.
But I think it also tied in, didn't it, Heidi? Something about Raz will have to correct us there, but I think when it, I think there was something to do with the translation with one of the languages where it did work quite well for the shop with the PE on the end. Kind of, it made more
So
sense.
translating English or American English?
Both.
So, yeah.
Yes. SHOPPE would be the verb to go shopping in Norwegian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
almost sensible then.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah,
It's
I'm
nearly
sorry.
like the
I'm
languages are
sorry.
related.
This is sounding. This
Well,
sounds
well,
like
yeah.
we've been hyper organized and professional with our podcast, which is the aim when people listen
We're
to it.
leaning towards professional.
We're leaning towards it. Yeah, we're kind
Yeah.
of like skirting
It's
around
like
the edges a
facial
little bit
images.
and stealing the good biscuits is
Mm.
probably the best way to look at it.
I mean,
Yeah.
I did make a Notion page, and we have been using it so far.
And Dan does take paper notes.
Yes.
I do write an agenda before we start an episode and run through it with everyone before we hit live.
I thought you just said that you wrote in agenda.
Yes.
did.
Not an agenda.
Masculine. I can even show you how masculine my last agenda was. Is because it's all in block capitals, but then in orange pen because that was the closest one to me. Which is, if not manly, then I don't know what is. So I need a pen. What's that one will do?
Huh?
Yeah.
Surprised it wasn't a crayon
How dare you.
Like,
or
if
some
there was
kind of
one
like
bare hand, I think it would have been.
wood marker.
Well, at least
No,
these
it's
are
okay.
Janie's material markers.
They're in the next drawer down. I'm well aware of which that's not the ones to touch.
Don't
Next to
touch
the scissors
those.
I bought her at Maker Central.
Don't touch those.
Yeah,
But yeah,
do
so
not
the-
use the
the-
orange-handled scissors for anything other than fabric.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, wood's a fabric. It's just very dense. Veneer is also technically a fabric.
I'm cringing for her.
Um,
And suddenly,
Yes,
1 week later, Jane is a video. It was really strange. Happened so suddenly.
And Dan
Yeah,
gets to figure
absolutely.
out what a beard measurement is.
I mean, it's just the explanation of, like, so
Technically,
Mr. Tarrant,
they're
why have you been
not.
admitted to hospital today? And then it's the is it, well, I used the
Slipped on a pair of fabric shears 15 times.
I used the orange-handled scissors for cutting some wood. We'll leave them in. So is your wife handy?
I tell you what, there's a whole other T-shirt there as well, isn't there? Just something about when to and not to use the orange-handled scissors. I'll have to think on that one a bit.
These are not your scissors.
Yeah. These are not paper scissors.
Yes.
Well, you got to be careful
Yes.
because the orange handle. Because we've got a pair of orange handle scissors, which are they're Fiskars. Yeah,
Yeah, well,
Well, I
it's
was
just
gonna say,
a
yeah,
brand
they're
colour,
orange
isn't it?
and they're not. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I use them for spatchcocking the chicken because they're the strongest blade. Even they're stronger than the ones we got like kitchen.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Spatchcocking.
Oh,
Cut the spine
cut
out.
it along its spine and then split it open.
Spatchcocking.
Yeah, it's brilliant British word.
That's a new word. That's a new one. Yeah. You know, that's one thing with this podcast. I'm like learning so many slangs, especially when Dan will post like some random video where he'll like tell people there's some pickety pockety people. And I'm like, what is that? And then Janie's like,
so much
oh
more
no.
sense to what I actually say.
What do you actually say? Pickety pockety people. Tiddly people. Tiddly peeps.
Small people, tiddly peeps.
So Janie messages me and she's like, no, it's a real thing. And I'm like, I don't doubt it. There's a lot of British things that I don't think should be real, but they are.
Much like an American chocolate.
For sure. Yes. It's made with really gross things.
Delightful butyric acid.
Yeah.
Yes. Vomit.
Oh,
Heidi, don't worry. I'll bring some Norwegian stuff for Maker Camp.
Yes. That'd be great.
You're flying over the UK, right? You can just throw some out the window?
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
The windows are closed on airplanes, Jamie.
open the door then.
Oh, fuck. Okay, yeah.
He'll never make it.
We'll flush it down the toilet. Just spits out the back anyway.
Just be slightly bluish chocolate by the end.
I'm hoping it'll be sealed. I can just hose it down and be fine.
Yeah, you will hope that.
I mean, if you fly from Oslo, you're probably going to go over Iceland, though, aren't you?
Maybe Scotland. Neil could grab it for you.
North of ways, anyway. I don't know.
Yeah.
I had a vague notion of actually stopping by in Reykjavik for a couple of days, just because it's on the way going west. But then I realized that no, I don't have enough time in between the things and landing early enough, so I don't look like an absolute like bestial wreck when I'm supposed to be teaching on Friday morning. So maybe next time.
Yeah, on the way back.
Yeah, but the problem on the way back is that I sort of need to get home as fast as possible so that I can sleep off the jet lag before I'm supposed to show up at the market on the weekend right afterwards.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
These are the problems that Raz has that we don't discuss on the podcast because he factors them in as an extra thing of international flight in between markets as well as making stock and prepping everything.
I'm not trying to pretend I'm sensible.
I was going to say that's almost sound insensible.
Yeah,
We're measuring things in Rasmus again. Or Rasmi.
I'm not supporting this.
It's going to be season 2's t-shirt.
Oh, fuck.
I wish I had a Rasmi of chocolate.
That's got to be a lifetime's worth, right?
Yeah, because you don't eat chocolate, do you? You're extra weird.
Yeah, I know.
See,
I like the whiskey that sort of.
You want a Rasmi of
tastes
lemon
like
meringue pie?
See, what now?
So you want a Rasmi of lemon meringue pie? It
Oh,
rhymes
like
as
an
well.
eternity of it.
Yes. Now we're gonna sing a song.
It has to be a published known song, Heidi.
Oh,
I'm not.
You know, I'm a
not an
published
Oompa Loompa.
musician, so I can probably do that. The Rasmi and lemon meringue pie. Can't even
There's a
speak.
song about toast, so there must be one about lemon meringue pie somewhere.
This is true.
So Raz,
so
how's
that's
the
what-
Lafroig? Just before we get into some proper sensible conversation, I noticed that 3 of us are drinking whiskey here.
Yeah,
I'm on
it's
Tam
really
Lagoon.
good. And I bought this on recommendation from you and Neil coming home from Hanover last, which is just about a month ago now. Which is one of the things where I'm realizing how much I'm traveling because it is kind of
Really
silly.
worrying that it's not far away. What's the verdict on it? I haven't actually. I realise we're having a private conversation in the middle of the podcast here, but
Yeah,
is
that's
it as good as we thought?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it doesn't feel fully like being slapped in the face with a fistful of like seaweed, but I can appreciate it.
Yeah, it's not far off.
Yeah.
Would you
What do you
prefer
see
a
on
whiskey
down at the
that makes
minute?
you feel like you've been slapped in the face with a fistful of seaweed?
Yeah, I like that. Only in whiskey though, not in other parts of my life.
Like
So we
Lefroy's
have
pretty
editing software.
peaty.
Yeah.
We do have a question for you, Raz, from the audience. Is about whether you've got your ground transport sorted out yet, or whether you'll be begging verified again.
I have parts of my ground transport figured out.
Is that you're getting off the plane and walking to the terminal door, and that's what you've got figured out?
Yes. Is there more to it? I'm flying from Oslo to New York, Indianapolis. Then I'm teaching at the Coal Iron Works School. Then I need to figure out how to get from Coal Iron Works over to Zach's place in Ohio. That's the part I haven't figured out yet. But from Zach's place, Joey, Jim, maybe Steve, and me will road trip over to Maker Camp. And I think we then need to leave the car at the airport in Albany and then figure something out to the Catskills. But this is way more planned out than it was last year. It doesn't sound like it, I realize, but this is more planned out. I have done a better job, although I still have forgotten to ask Grant Alexander if I can borrow his tent and sleeping bag again, because that was very nice last year.
So it's not just turn up in the US and go, I'm Rasmus, get me to where I need to be. To like random people on the street.
Sort of.
I mean, it worked last time. I got to visit Tony's shop. Got to meet a nice guy from Vermont. I mean, it was very pleasant. Well, for me, it was anyway. For some reason, the guy I met in Vermont, Tim, is not coming to Maker Camp this year. So it's very sad.
Did you find this out after you'd confirmed that you were?
Yeah.
Not trying to connect any dots here or anything, but, you know.
No, we don't like
Give
dots.
a picture forms.
I have a very willful memory, and I'm choosing to forget parts of this conversation right away.
Oh dear. Yeah,
I was going to say, do we want to steer this back to sensible?
Do we have anything sensible to talk about?
So setting up shop. So setting up shop. Do you want to give us the
oh, hi Tim. Sorry.
Premise?
He has a different nickname
freaking
here.
amazing.
For the benefit of the listening audience, the previous question was asked by username DaVinci42, who now turns out to be Tim.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense now. And yes, Tim, at least the part I need your help with last year, this part is figured out now.
Is it worth saying, Tim, if you're feeling under duress, just blink twice for yes?
He got chocolates. I'm sure he's fine. I hope he's
that
fine.
is your universal currency.
And it keeps on working.
Fair.
So I mean, don't change the winning system or something like it.
Rasmai of chocolate.
Are you going to make the T-shirt for that for your podcast, or should we?
No doubt, Malta will be making a sticker tomorrow.
Waffle ones. Yeah,
I'm sure you guys are welcome to it, as it was brought up on your podcast.
I really must go back and listen through to some of the early ones to kind of get some of the great ideas we had and actually write them down, and then actually turn them into something at some point.
Yeah, we'll get that fourth wall shop going.
Almost like, need to set up a shop.
There you go.
So talking of setting up shop.
Ooh.
That smells like a segue to me.
If the Segway smells, you should clean it.
If it looks like a... very wrong. I can say if it looks like a Segway and smells like a Segway.
It's a duck.
That is a segue. So who wants to give us the heads up on the kind of the overall premise of setting up shop for the benefit of those who've not yet listened to it? Because there might be a couple
Starting an elevator pitch
millions.
from Heidi, a lift
Yeah.
pitch from Dan, and a move stuff uppy downy from Raz kind of pitch.
An elevator pitch.
Do you want to take
Catapult.
the lead on this one, Heidi?
Sure. So, setting up shop are three makers from around the world talking about how they took their hobby and turned it into a business. Each of us is set up at different stages of our business, and we decided to have a conversation about how we got started, how we're maintaining, and how we plan to grow. And we're bringing everyone else along for the ride. In the way that we're doing that, we're also providing some additional insights to how best to not make the mistakes that we have made and possibly do it a little bit better than all three of us have been able to do ourselves.
So much more succinct than I would ever do that.
Beautifully done.
Yeah. Well, what did we give from here? That's it, isn't it? You just wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. See you.
Thanks for coming.
See you all later.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having us, and we will see you next time.
So yeah, I did a bit more to it. You've done an introduction to yourselves and one episode.
That's what's
correct?
released so far. Episode 2
So
is
far?
being released tomorrow on Monday. We're doing it as a season. We're not doing like you guys have done. I noticed that we're episode 111, which in the UK means that you could ring the NHS on this number for help.
Will they be able to help them?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, whether you get hold of them or not is another question.
Mm.
But basically, it's kind of we've done a season, so there are 5 episodes plus the prologue. So it's 6 recordings all in. So they should finish round about on the 1st or 2nd of October, I think it works out at.
You're taking the kind of the BBC approach to seasons.
No, we're taking the oh shit, we're going to be really busy with our own markets approach. How many episodes can we fit in before that kicks in? Kind of model.
Dan's like, let me air out our dirty laundry.
It's whiskey. What can I say? Yeah,
but it's a valid point. It's a valid point. For anyone involved in kind of sort of making professionally. I mean, there are a couple of podcasts that I listen to, and they kind of basically, I mean, 2 that spring to mind. Yeah, you got Making It. You've been going for 450 episodes now, whatever it is. Yeah, and basically they repeatedly sort of say, yeah, we do this and we get the support from the patrons. And it's we can only dedicate a certain amount of time to it because they are so busy with their schedules of big builds and video in it, and all the things that Jimmy does and all that. And then something like the forgot the name of it now. Matt Smith and Keith Brown. Working Hands. No, not Working Hands. That's American. I'll have to look it up on my phone in a moment. But they kind of do again both full-time makers, and they do a podcast. They even do theirs, I think, fortnightly, because of the amount of time it takes up from actually taking time from doing things in family life. And if you're particularly, I mean, Raz, you're full-time
workshop banter, Kaz has just said in the chat.
Brilliant, thank you, Kaz. Yep. So I mean, Raz, you're running a full-time blacksmith shop with other metal work. I mean, Heidi, you've got a full-time corporate job, plus you're running your own sort of side business. Dan, you work for a large company.
Shop boy, and I also do woodwork.
Yeah, it's a busy job. Plus, then you've got, I mean, all 3 of you have got kind of other commitments outside of your making, whether it's sort of family, dancing. These are all things that sort of take up time. And so, committing to something, particularly when there is that seasonal aspect of going into a time where, you've got to hit markets. You've got to have enough stuff to hit the markets.
Yeah.
I mean, we're chatting like with the men's shed that I go to. We occasionally go to sort of local craft events and other sort of town events where there might be stalls. And something kind of go, just a newsletter came through today and basically saying, there's an event coming up. It's 2 days, but we're probably only going to have one day on the stand because we don't have much stock at the moment.
Yeah.
And that obviously it's not quite as critical. We're not doing that. It brings in a few pennies. It pays for some new tools and things, but it's not the same situation as trying to run a business, which you guys are doing. So,
and that's kind of the conversation. Sorry, Jamie, go on.
I was going to say, it also gives you a nice point to, that kind of jumping off point of a check-in before you all get stupidly busy, and then a kind of a follow-in check-in the other side of the mad busy period.
Yeah,
it's a good kind of benchmark then of any of the lessons that you put into place, or kind of allowing you to see that growth and kind of pass on that those data points to the listeners as well.
Yeah, so season 1 was we kind of constructed it all around. Let's assume that they make something. They've been asked enough by friends and family about, hey, you should do this as a business or sell it or whatever, and they want to give it a go. But then they've got a vague idea of how to do that, but they're not quite sure. The most common thing for people to do for the first place they try and physically sell it is face-to-face at a market of some description. And so we've tried to put in place a very rough and broad framework for people to use to be able to go to a market with a bit more confidence, to consider things that we certainly didn't, and they might not have done, from things like, hey, take card and cash, all that kind of, like, some of it seems a bit more obvious than others, but also things about designing your actual layout and all that conversation, and also being honest with yourself about things like, if you've designed and made a product and then you show it to your family and they say, oh yeah, that's really nice, and then you show it to your close friends and they say, yeah, that's really nice, take it to the next outer ring of friends who maybe would be a bit more honest and
that was really
ask for
solid
genuine
advice,
feedback. Because your family and close friends, unless they're really, really good, will do their best to not hurt your feelings. And so they're more likely to say, oh, yeah, that's lovely, and not give you an accurate reflection of what they actually think. That's not to say that what you make is necessarily rubbish, but it might just be that there's a little tweak that could make it more appealing.
You're trying to find less biased feedback there, aren't you?
That's basically. And there's a lot of that kind of stuff that we've, between the three of us, have individually experienced or sometimes collectively experienced, depending on what the things are. So each episode kind of focuses on a different thing. And then we talk it through. And we did have quite a lot of conversations beforehand. We planned out the whole season. We spoke about what do we think is important that they need to know now compared to what could come later on. So there are certain aspects of marketing that we focus in on for a first sort of market. And then there'll be a deeper dive into other aspects of it that can come later on in another season. But we also, we cover one of the most important ones is about how to price, and that's as you guys had the other week, you had people on talking about that conversation, and it's always tricky for people. But it also, as you say, it comes from the different angles. We talk about, if you want to do this seriously, then you might be worth episode 1. It's already out, we on the website, we give them an option of downloading a file, which is very simple. It's just a weekly planner, but for you to literally write out everything in your weekly planner. Remember to put in things like sleeping and stuff like that, and say, right, where do I actually have time? Because if you don't have any, then you're going to have to make time by getting rid of some of the things you currently do. And if you're married or you've got kids or anything like that, that's going to be harder. So it's realizing before you go too far down the road how much time you actually have. That's not to mean don't do it. It just means the scale of how quickly you can get things done is going to adjust depending on how much spare or free time you've got to dedicate towards getting the thing moving forwards.
The benefit that the three of you have got there is the time established in doing this. It's not like it's something you're just starting out doing and we're coming along the journey. This is something that you've all been working at for years to build up. So you've got that experience of being able to pose those difficult questions to people and say, look, this is something that you might not necessarily come to immediately yourself. You know, here are the kind of the steps that might leapfrog you in your, you know, kind of emotional discovery on this, or your personal discovery on this as you go down that line. You know, it's a really good thing to see.
There's quite a big difference between liking to have a hobby and feeling like you make a good product and actually having a full-time job being a maker or tradie or something. There's miles in between there and probably years of experience before you can do the other one comfortably. Like, one thing is just pricing, just figuring out how do you charge appropriately for your thing. Because, like, at least us in this community, we don't want to overcharge for anything. But we need to be paid fairly for our time. We need to have our margins. We need to have flexibility and earn enough on it to invest back into the business. And preferably earn enough so that we can have sick days.
Yeah. I think one of the problems we often tend to face as makers trying to price things is we're pricing it as if we were buying it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, what would we pay for that thing? But we know what goes into making it because we've just made it. You know, it's that there's a real dichotomy with it of, you know, the understanding that there's a real person making the thing, and it is time and life and, you know, business costs and operating expenditure and all the rest of the kind of stuff, versus what you would personally pay for something you know how to make, and forgetting the fact that people will still buy it, you know, because other people can't necessarily make the thing that you're selling.
Yeah.
I think that's like one of the things that we take for granted a lot in our community because we're so surrounded by people that can do. That maybe we don't have a lot of relationships with people that can't do. And so then it's like we always kind of devalue our labor efforts because, oh, well, Dan could do that. Like, it's no big deal. Like, Rasmus could do that. Jamie does it in his sleep. Like, there's not enough value to what I'm doing because I see all these other people that are either equally as impressive with what they do, or, you know, are better at what they do than I am, versus like having conversations with, like, what's nice about me having a full-time job is that I work with people that can't do, you know, I work with people that they're not creative at all, or they have no inclination whatsoever to make something themselves. They're like, I'll just buy it. I'll buy it from you. I'll pay you double what you say you're going to charge me because I can't do it and I see the value in it. And we actually talked about that in one of our episodes about making sure that you are recognizing your personal value, making sure that you are paying yourself not just a livable wage, but paying yourself those years of experience, and making sure that you're not just looking at, you know, oh, well, I would normally just give this away. So I can make $2 on it and I'll feel good because I made $2 on it. But like Rasmus said, and I never thought about that before. Thank you, Rasmus, of like making sure that you're paying yourself enough if you get sick, if you get hurt, if, you know, something happens, especially if that's your main gig, you want to make sure that you're covered. And I think it's a really difficult thing. We talk a lot about emotions in what we make and how it all ties together, and how sometimes it'll hurt our feelings if someone doesn't see the value in it or someone has a criticism of it. But there's also feelings wrapped up in price and cost. And, you know, it feels good to give something away. It feels good to make something special for somebody, or see someone react like, oh, this is really nice. I don't have the money right now. Oh, I'll just give it to you. That feels really good.
Yeah, it's the distinction between being nice people and being people who run a business.
Yeah. And that's really hard for makers to like go from being that type of person to being business minded. It's a huge there's a huge gap for some people there that maybe don't have that equity in their brain of like what business is. And unfortunately, I there's like that whole like 90s idea of like being a business owner, like that you have to be this cutthroat, like slick back hair 1990s stockbroker person.
The full yuppie.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us grew up rejecting that notion, rejecting that idea. And that's why we're makers, or that's why we put our effort into being self-employed or whatever. And so as soon as we start to I don't want to say devolve, but as soon as we start to move into that atmosphere of being that person asking for money, it's ugh, I didn't want this part of it. Ugh. But it's definitely something you have to reconcile.
Yeah. And it's also very interesting as well, because I've certainly found, and I know like you just had then, Heidi, we'll be recording the episode of whatever it is we're talking about, and things will just fire off in your brain, and you're like, that's what I need to do. That's what I need to do to change my thing. So we were talking on another episode about that, literally like the design and the stuff when you're putting it out on the table. How do you present it? Make sure it's got a price label, blah, blah, blah. What do you write on it and things like that. And I suddenly had, for me, this thing that I will now stick in my head every time I'm putting something out on a market stall or whatever to put it out. If you imagine that everyone who is coming to your stand is deaf and dumb, so they are unable to communicate with you because, assuming you don't know sign language, but they want to buy something from you, how would they know what it's for and how much it is? So that's not, don't talk down to someone like that, obviously, but if you have got it clearly labeled with its purpose and what its price is in a succinct way, if you assume that with everyone, then you can put that on every single item, whatever it is you're doing, and it will help answer a lot of those questions that people might want to ask you but don't feel they can. Either you're chatting to someone else, or they're not that much of an extrovert, and so rather than asking the question which might lead to a sale, they'll move on. It seems like possibly an over-the-top reaction, but for me that really narrowed it down to, how do I, what do I need to put on each item? And for me that was like, oh, this is a really simple thing now. I can visualize exactly what I would need to do for anything that I put out on a stand, because I'm assuming that about any customer that comes up. Not that I'm going to expect customers to walk up and I'm going to be like, okay, do I, can I actually communicate with them? But that element of just factoring that in, so that now triggers something that means you meet a certain standard across the board with what you're doing. But I wouldn't have necessarily had that realization if we weren't having the conversation during one of the recordings. So all of it is helping us as individuals as well and pushing us along on our own journey.
That's a really interesting point, that Dan, because the from just an interactive personal experience point of view, going kind of the accessibility first route is always going to be the winner. None of us in our lives have ever kind of come up towards something that was two different levels of ground and been faced with a ramp and gone, oh no, I can't do the ramp, I would rather do the stairs. But people come up to stairs and go, I could really use a ramp here. So having more information there it doesn't impact people who know what the thing's for and know how much they want to pay. But having that accessibility first kind of viewpoint allows that accessibility for anyone else. I think that's a really solid way to put that down, to go for that view first. I like that.
Yeah,
and
it
also
is. Go on, Raz. On.
It's just like, if you start thinking like almost to that extreme, like someone deaf and dumb wants to buy this thing, how do I communicate with them? If you just start with that premise, even if you get halfway there, that's a hell of a lot better than not even thinking about it at all.
Yeah.
And that goes for all of the things, like go for the extreme of it and then dial it back to what's easily achievable in the moment and what you can work towards later.
So there was a where I work, we had a craft market yesterday, and because I was working there, obviously I took the opportunity to look around, and I took some pictures which I will share on the Setting Up Shop Instagram in the future, which is setting_up_shop SHOPPE, for those of you who'd like to follow along.
Very smooth then.
And so these guys were making leather goods, so belts, bags, all that kind of stuff. And they've got like just I would call it a smaller handbag, right? They call it a crossbody bag. So there is a little sign next to it, and there's not a price on the sign. What it does say is this: this crossbody bag is handmade using UK produced leather and lambskin lining. It is hand stitched and takes approximately 4 days to make.
Mm.
Right. So that answers a huge amount of information that people it wasn't displayed in a way you would pick it up and you'd be happy holding it around. But then they had 3 of them on display. This was the middle one, and the top one had the price next to it of £180. Okay, which if you consider that it took approximately 4 days to make plus materials, that's cheap.
Yeah.
It's £45
But
a day.
you wouldn't know how long that took, because I've been asked the question, how long did it take you to make this? And instantly you feel defensive, or like you have to justify what it is you're saying. Or you like, well, if I say it only took me 30 minutes, people are going to go, well, why are you charging X amount of money for it when it took you only 30 minutes? And it's like, well, it only took me 30 minutes because I've been doing this for 7 years.
Yeah.
And I've got more equipment that allows me to do this faster.
That's a perfect way to phrase it, though. It took me 7 years and 30 minutes.
Well, that's exactly that tends to be what I do say. That tends to be what I do say, and then you'll get some people who kind of roll their eyes and go, "All right, yeah, okay," So it doesn't always give a positive vibe. That might just be the way I say it. I don't know why they might. That might.
Maybe you go. It took me an hour and a half 7 years ago. Now I can do it a little bit quicker.
Yeah. But it's definitely that thing of the data was there. And I really liked that, because they were like, look, here's all of the answers to the most commonly asked questions. We're not doing it in a horrible way. The sign is there. It was in big print as well. It was like, proper, you wouldn't need glasses to read it kind of thing. It was easy to see. And I just thought that was quite a good bit of marketing, if you like, that put it out there.
Because like one thing I'm sort of struggling with in exactly this is the roses I make. I mean, I sell them fairly expensive, especially considering now that the small ones in iron I can make in about 15 minutes. But that's
tell them that, Raz.
But that's after I made 200 of them or 250 of them, and over a couple of years, and made tooling and spent a hell of a lot of time getting good at making these things.
But over that time, though, your gas for the forge, or your fuel for the forge, or the steel price, or your wear and tear on your shoulder joint, or any of this other stuff is all
the cost of moving workshops.
Yeah, the multiple pizzas for the friends to coerce them into moving your workshop. All of that cost is kind of factored in over the course of time as you've done it. So although you've improved the processes and brought the time down.
Yeah, but I still struggle with sort of how to answer that question, because I just say about an hour, because that's what it was at when I set the price for them 4 years ago or whatever it was.
I think what we all need to remember is, though, and I haven't got the answer to this one, why is the customer asking that question? Do you see what I mean? It's what is the driving force behind that? Do they want you to tell them, this has taken me 6 hours to lovingly craft this, and I've poured my blood, sweat, and tears into all of this, and etc., etc.? Is that what they want? They want to know that they're getting their money's worth, or is it a casual question because it happens to be that they also, without letting you know, are a craft person?
I think for me, like, it's been 9 times out of 10 people just don't understand what the process of pottery is, and they have this vision of maybe like the Ghost movie. And they're like, oh, it looks really hard until a guy gets behind you, and it's like really messy.
Is that not how it happens?
Yeah, it's precisely. I mean, that's like a documentary of pottery, really. But usually, like most people, I kind of find it impressive when I'm like, yeah, I can bust out like 20 of these in 2 hours, or whatever, 20 in an hour, and people are like, what? And then I can kind of talk through, like, pottery isn't so much about sitting behind the wheel. It's like all of the steps required to get the end product. So it may take me 20 minutes to like throw something large, but it takes me 3 weeks in the entire process to like come out with the final piece.
Yeah.
Like I feel like a lot of wood turners, and sorry Dan, a lot of wood turners are like, oh man, if I could bust out that much product in that short of time, like I would be amazing. And I sometimes just want to be like, right, but your kiln drying time, like the time that the wood just sits there and you do nothing with it, is like the equivalent of the after process that I do, where I just get to sit and watch the piece dry on the shelf and hope that when I put it in the kiln, it's dry enough and doesn't explode because there's too much moisture. You know, like,
it's like when you chop the wood down, when you bring that, you know, kind of fresh wood into your shop, turn your lathe up 90 degrees. And then when the wood's ready, turn the lathe back down horizontal, and then you're good. Factor that time in, and you're all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a really funny thing, I think, because I've done so many of those virtual maker weekends, and a lot of the people that are part of that organization, like that group of people that go through there, and thank you, Jamie, for putting that together, JP Woodwork. Just shout out to that guy. He like did a shit ton of work for that. A lot of the people that followed the makers that were doing that were wood turners. So then they'd see me throw something within like a couple of minutes each, and you know, they get a little green with envy. It was like, okay, but this is going to sit on a shelf for 2 weeks before I can touch it and finish it. Like you can put some dye on it, you can sand it, you can put some finish on it, and then you get a beautiful piece when you're done. And maybe you only made one piece in that day, but it's finished in that day. Like you get that instant gratification of having it, which is really funny to me, because I guess like the idea is like it's all spinny things, like everything's spinning, so we can correlate, but it's
like, right. The equivalent in wood turning is pen turners.
There you go. Yeah. They could just bust about 50 of them out in a couple hours, right?
I suppose they also don't quite have the same worry of getting to the finishing process, and then it might just explode on you, and you might not actually have something at the end of it. That's more in in the spinning bit, though, isn't it? You know, it's not just
yeah. Your failure and your product is immediate. My failure might lapse for about 2 weeks.
That's very true. Yeah, I mean, unless you start playing with green wood and you're letting it dry and split and crack and all that kind of good stuff. But yeah, I mean this is part of the wonderful thing. This is partly why. So when I kind of had the idea for the podcast, I was like, right, the worst thing I can do now is ask 2 other straight white male woodworkers to join me on this, because we will only have one perspective, particularly if we're all from the UK. You know, there won't be any form of variety or perspective change, which is, you know, why I asked Heidi, why I asked Rasmus, because, you know, we've got 3 different craft disciplines. We've got, you know, different genders. We've got different parts of the world. So we've got cultural differences as well, and there's all those different things that take into play. By all means, I could have expanded that. We could have said, oh, actually, can we also get someone who does sewing? Can we get someone who does this? Can we get someone who does that? But it gets a little bit messy after a while.
There's always room for guests or specials.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that was the other thing. So we're hoping in future seasons to have guests, and whether that's to talk about a specific craft or to talk about a specific aspect of selling. But we've also got the other things of the fact that, you know, I've worked full-time in retail on and off for most of my adult life, either, you know, selling something in some shape or form and having to learn how to upsell and bundle things together, and making sure, you know, you're comparing your prices against people online and all that kind of stuff, and working out how to explain why one product has a higher price tag than another product and all of that sort of stuff. And then Heidi's got all of her background and all of the print media world, you know, and then Rasmus is full-time, but even though he is full-time as a blacksmith, he is, I was going to say he's deviating. He's a deviant. He has
I think diversified
yes, that's his gender. Portfolio. He's deviant.
He likes to identify as that. Yeah, absolutely. he has a diversified portfolio in the sense of, he's not just at the forge all the time, or even forge and teaching. He is now bringing in machinery to sell to other, what you might even say is he's selling stuff to his competitors to help them get better, which from a business model as a blacksmith might sound completely wrong and alien. And, traditionally in the old days, you'd be like, no, I will harbor all the secrets to myself. We won't share things. But that's not what the community is about. It's all about.
I heard rumor he's put microphones in all the machines and the ovens, so that he can actually get an idea of what the competitors are doing.
Yeah. And he's put little like devices on them, so at any point he can just self-destruct. And, like, you need to buy upgrades and spare parts now.
Yeah.
He's not Apple.
Oh, sorry.
No.
There goes my next sponsor application.
I don't use any of the marketing. It's just OnlyFans.
Okay. That's fine.
Yes, I have visions.
Yeah.
You do have a massive anvil.
I wonder where you were going with that.
Different conversation, Heidi. Maybe for after the show.
Yeah. But so it's been a lot of fun, and we've already got ideas for the second season, which we'll record in the new year. Because this is the other thing, as we said earlier, we're all now going into seasonal markets and things like that. I've got my first 3-day event in 2 weeks' time. So I'm desperately trying to stop panicking about it and actually make stock for it, which is another thing that is difficult to learn.
Yeah.
And so, we've all got that going on. But then we, as we said, we've each got various things going on in our lives as well. So it's very good to have this kind of miniature support group of each other. And we do use our chat, not just to talk about the WhatsApp, but kind of go, hey, I've got this problem, or can someone just check this out? Or I'm developing a new product. I'm not sure about the proportions. Can you just give me your honest answer, and that kind of thing. So, and we open that out as well, Jamie. Sorry, just to say, we open that out as well. I think it was the first episode we specifically said, if anyone wants to DM any of us individually on Instagram or as a group, and you've got something and you're not sure about, we are more than happy to give you fair critique. That's not to say we will look at it and go, well, that's rubbish. It will be very much a case of, what's it trying to be and all that kind of stuff. Actually give you positives as well as negatives, and help you with the product, rather than just sit there going, oh, well, I can do much better than that, which doesn't help anyone at all.
And it's probably worth also adding on to that, Dan, that not just necessarily a wood turner should always come to you, and a blacksmith should always go to Raz, and any potter should always go to Heidi. I think
absolutely.
Reach out to all of, or a mix of.
Well, it's like you said earlier, who's your customer?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't buy wood-turned objects from other wood turners. Not because I can make them myself, but because I've got enough wood-turned stuff floating around the house already that I really can't justify to my other half having another item and say, oh, but I bought that from someone. It doesn't necessarily work. But I would buy pottery. I would buy blades or some of the roses or whatever from Raz. So if you want, if you particularly, it depends on the conversation, doesn't it? If you're asking someone, how much would you pay for this? Probably don't lead with that conversation if we've never spoken before. But that is a fair question as part of a critique, and exactly as you said, go between each other. But yeah,
I suppose as a primer, it's also worth saying it's saying how much would you pay for this is quite a difficult thing for the other person to answer. Yeah. If you've got a price in mind that you want to ask someone, say, do you think this is, something that someone would pay for X amount?
Absolutely.
Well, give an offer for someone to advise you on, rather than nebulous questions.
Absolutely.
And also, like Heidi mentioned earlier, like asking another craftsperson, what are you willing to pay for the thing that you possibly can make yourself? Yeah. It's like, well, that doesn't really work. It's more realistic to say, like, I'm curious about this product. What do you think is a fair price range for this? Yeah. And especially if you are in the same trade, it's like, well, this is a wooden bowl. This is a wooden bowl. What makes your cost so much more than the one I just made?
Yeah. Is this a premium product? Is this a mid-range product? Is this a lower-end price product?
I mean, like,
importantly as well, which region of what country do you live in, and are you trying to sell
Yes.
locally there? Because there's a wood turner who is far better than I will ever be, and a lot younger. And yes, there's some jealousy there. Who lives in
we might have picked up on a bit of that.
who lives in sort of northwest of Wales, and the people around there will not pay. They don't have the money, they don't see the value in it as such. So he makes something that, yes, he can make them very fast, but he makes an exceptionally nice little coffee scoop, gorgeous little thing. And if I went to an event recently with a load of other wood turners, and I kept bringing up and saying to them, well, how much would you pay for one of those? Which, as we've just said, is a bit difficult to other wood turners. And one of the instructors said, well, I wouldn't, because I make my own. Yeah, cheers, thanks for that. But everyone was quoting between 30 and 40 pounds for this thing, and it's literally about 4 inches long, but it's just very well proportioned, really nicely made. He charges at his local market £15 each, but his day job is a tree surgeon for people who want trees removed.
Well, so this was going to be
all of the wood he has forested himself, he's dried himself, he's been paid to take away. He enjoys the turning, so when he's not dealing with the trees and whatever, he's got the spare time because he's got an income, so he doesn't need to pay himself to make these things. So he just processes some of the wood, chucks it up, turns a batch, and he will turn a batch of like 50 or 70 of these at a time, because it's the same design every time, and he's got his eye in, and it's one of his core products. And he, generally speaking, is happy with that price to a certain extent, but he's also an exceptionally introverted individual. So he's not going to go out of his way and try and justify it being a higher cost price, because he knows that the locals in the area where he lives won't pay more. But he does wholesale further afield, and this is where the frustration is the wrong word, but that kind of wanting them to succeed kicks in. Is he doesn't then up the price when it goes further afield. And that's where it's little things like that, where if you want to use that as a case study, but at the end of the day, is the guy happy with what he's getting for it?
There's absolutely an element of that, but there's also the element that could be negatively impacting others in the same craft who are trying to make a thing. But that was what I was going to bring up earlier, that it's kind of, sort of segues in quite nicely. But as 3 makers who are, setting up shop, 2 of you have full-time jobs. One of you is tangentially employed to kind of what you are, obviously down with your kind of link to a wood supply place and you work with wood. Do you find, if you've looked at the pricing models that the 3 of you use, do you find that there is a difference between the 2 people who are self-employed, or not self-employed, but who are full-time employed in another job, and the way you price versus Raz, whose only income is from that sort of employed gig? Do you find that you 2 tend to be lower priced, or more lenient, or more flexible in things? Or
I would say that maybe the problem with that conversation as well is that Norway is such an expensive country that my hourly rate will be so much more, just based on the fact that Norway is expensive. And then on top of that, I need to be able to charge enough so that I can have downtime in between when jobs shows up,
of course,
that I can spend making products and hopefully sell in maybe a year, maybe 2 years time. I have products that I'm run out of this last week that I made 3-4 years ago. So I need to be paid now for products that I'm selling in years.
So your cash flow management is different to those of us with full-time jobs.
Well, if you say that it exists.
Yeah. See, my difference is, and this again, this is where the 3 of us are different, is that I don't need the extra money from my craft. I don't have that element of, oh no, this will be the difference between me being able to pay for a bill at home of X or Y or whatever.
Yeah, the risk is minimized.
The risk is incredibly small, and I'll tell you how small it is. Over the 18 months to 2 years that I've been selling at markets, I have taken money out of the business to pay myself once. All of it has gone straight back into buying machinery or materials or whatever, and justifiably, my wife has said, so when are you paying yourself from this, kind of thing? And it is still in the building stage of the business, so it's not really a problem. But there will come a time where I will have to make sure I have the regular income. So I've factored in margins that will allow me on certain products to wholesale, because a wholesale client is going to want to make their percentage, and they'll have to put tax on it as well. So I've taken all that into consideration. That means that my turnover of stock is not fast. I have a premium price on what I sell. I'm not going to go to a market that is, generally speaking, filled with people who are doing this as a lot more of a hobby and just want a bit of cash to buy the next bit of wood, because my product won't sell next to them. And there's nothing wrong with them doing that. That's absolutely fine. You've just got to pick the market to make sure that you're not there if that's not what you want to do. Heidi, again, separate situation. Obviously, I can't speak for her. Certainly won't mansplain for her, because that would just be really bad.
That'd be weird.
Yeah, it would be very weird.
Yeah.
But so I don't have that. I don't have that risk. So for me, like the flow of product and the pricing, I have to challenge myself to make myself try and take a risk rather than going, I'll be all right.
Yeah. I think just to hop on the back of what Dan was saying, a lot of my finances go right back into the business as well, which means like I'm upgrading to a new kiln, or I'm building a new studio, or all of these things that are in line with an idea that at some point that is the end goal, is that I would be doing all of my time focused on the studio. So I was very deliberate in making sure that my prices were in line with other potters who were doing the work, number one. Number two, that they were in line with the fluctuations in the market with the cost of materials. I use a lot of specialty glazes that aren't always available, that I have to stock up a lot for to be able to have it for when, big markets come up. So there's a lot involved with the mindset of project management and financial management and everything else. I think very similar to Ras talking about, like, I have to have this amount of product so that next year I will have it for markets. I'm very much in the place right now that most of my clients, most of my time is spent not for my own shop, but stocking other people's storefronts, which is, to me, a nicer place to be. Like, don't get me wrong, I like markets. I'm obviously an extrovert. I like talking to people. But what is nice about having wholesale, having regular clients that, order from me by monthly, is that I know my kiln will always be full, so that I can do the fine art pieces that I want to do. Like, we talk a lot about like being makers and being artists, and having to like have a connection to your work and doing something that is pleasing to your soul and has a message for yourself. If I didn't have the wholesale work filling up my kiln, I wouldn't have the opportunity to fire the pieces that I want to do, because I can't put one piece in my kiln and fire it. I have to have, 30 plus pieces. So it's something that subsidizes the need to create.
Yeah.
For me, along with being a potential career in the future. So I don't take it lightly how I price my things. I don't give things away unless it's for a cause that I'm super into. And I'm probably a bit more seasoned when it comes to that, because I've had a lot of people come to me and be like, can I have this piece? And I'll give it away, and then I'll regret it. Like, why did I just give that away? Why did I do that? And then, become wiser and stronger in my opinions of like, no, I think you can pay me for that. I think your organization makes enough money that they can pay for the whole sale if you want 20 mugs. You know, I'm not just donating all of this. So
yeah, whereas I've been hardline right from the get-go, and I didn't even give my mother-in-law a discount the other day, which didn't go down too well with my wife, but you know.
A shower, Mayo.
No, but, just to that though, I was talking to a fellow blacksmith here in Norway a couple of months back, and he was struggling apparently with having a lot of shitty friends who expected him to do a lot of things for free for them. And I was like, no, you need friends who support you enough that they are willing to pay full price.
Yeah,
that's
100%.
when you really start to know that you're doing the right thing.
Well, that's when you know you've got friends.
Yeah, as well.
Not just people you grew up with.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like it also goes both ways, because like you need to demand of them that no, this is my job. Like if I'm giving you this for free, it's taking away from my ability to buy food and pay rent. And in some occasions, yes, I want to be this nice with you, but for the most part, I can't, because I do have bills to pay.
That also builds on the thing of something Joe Garnett said to me, which I found amusing at the time, but also very true. If you ever want stuff for yourself that you make, do it before you start selling it to the general public. Like if you start doing prototyping and stuff and you go, oh, I think this is kind of cool, I think this would sell well, make another one, because if you don't, you won't be able to afford your own work.
Yeah. That's also something.
If you consider it, if you actually think about it, and you go, oh, well, I could turn myself a set of plates for the table. Yeah, I could turn myself a set of 6 plates for the table. I sell plates at £34 a plate. So if I just turn 6 plates from the wood that I've bought for the business and put them on my table and I don't pay for them, the only person I'm cheating is myself.
Yeah.
Is one way of looking at it. The other way is like, oh, well, if you just want plates, you just put them on the table. Yeah, I do. But then that's a sale that I can't make. And the time that I put into making those, I don't get back. So before you start going down that route, it's well worth any prototypes that you make. By all means, keep them. But also, do like that extra finished piece and have it and keep it for yourself then, because, you won't be able to afford to do it once you start
doing
your
prototype. Do your one for you as the keeper.
Yeah.
And then do your production run.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing on that as well is I've got prototypes that I've kept, and I've put a sticker on the back of them with the date and when I made it and what the thought process was behind it. I've no idea why I started doing that. I've only got a few, but there was just something about it that I thought, I kind of, I want to be able to look back and go, well,
Future Dan might need this.
Yeah, and because I'm a hoarder and the sticker justifies keeping that.
I've done the same though.
It lets you see progress.
Yeah.
If nothing else, it lets you see progress.
I have, out of the first 10 heart hooks I ever made, I still have 3 of them because they're that bad that I never sold and none of my family wanted them.
Just to clarify, by the way, because I had to realize this the other day, when Raz as a Viking says heart hooks, he means hooks that are in the shape of a heart, not hooks for removing a heart. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into that market yet.
That's what he wants us to believe.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
on that note, let's wind up the main show for now.
Sorry, I was halfway through the point he was making.
If I may just finish the heart hook thing, because one of the horrible things about having a very supportive family is that they keep all of the ugly shit you made early on. So outside of the door of my nan's there, she has one of the first heart hooks I made, and one of the first ones that kind of looks good. But out of the first 10 I made, I still have 3 of them in a box in the workshop. Every once in a while, I have a student in a class who are just super disheartened by the progress they've made compared to the speed and level I produce things at when I'm demonstrating. And I take that box out and I show them those 3 heart hooks, and then I find one that I just made and put it next to it, and like, this is me when I started out. This is one that this might have been number 100, and the one I made now might be 200 or something. There's leaps in between them, and that seems to help them a bit, because they realize that I was shitty too, but I need to show them the product of me being shitty.
Yeah, and that's a solid point of sometimes when we're learning stuff, we've got to realize and understand that there is a journey ahead of us.
Yeah. And
Maybe that journey is finding your podcast online. Where would people find that?
Our podcast can be found online on all of the usual listening places. It can be seen and heard on YouTube. It can be found on Spotify, on Apple Music, on SoundCloud, and on various other Podbean and various other things. I'm not sure of the others. I've forgotten the names. Start off smooth, failed off, the whiskey kicked in. Sorry.
There's an RSS feed on your website as well, which is also
There's an RSS feed on the website. Settingupshop.com. Remember, it's SHOPE.
And of course, if anyone wants to hear about each of you individually, you of course all been previous guests on Maker's Waffle, and they can go back and listen to it. And I will try and remember to link them in the show notes when I sort those out tomorrow morning.
Yay!
Right. So we're going to say goodbye now to the main show, and we'll have a short after show for the patrons. So if you're interested in listening to that, then you'll have to sign up for Patreon, because that's the only way you're going to get it. So, bye, folks.
Bye.
Bye.